heard, as Congress has developed this legislation, that there were not extensive hearings on this legislation, as there should be. The legislation moved rapidly through Congress without this type of hearing, and we feel that legislation of this type should have more extensive hearings. Is that basically correct?
I think so, Ron. There were hearings to a certain extent, and of course it is being handled in the form of an amendment to another bill. It is not a freestanding piece of legislation.
There have been 18 months of consideration of this legislation, I think.
No.
Well, I think Frank can answer on the OEO
The
part.
request for the OEO extension went up on March 11th, if
I mean,
my...
child care.
Well, the child care bill was attached to the OEO bill in the Senate committee, subsequent to our requesting the OEO extension.
It's been floating around for 18 months.
Well, there was a child development bill in the previous Congress, I think sponsored by Congressman Dellenbach, but it was never enacted.
Just contrast the scope of the program with, let's say, something like Medicare or Medicaid, and some feel that it would be that much of a commitment, and of course that kind of thing has taken longer. Family assistance, H.R. 1, in which the administration's primary proposal for expansion of child care is contained, has been before the Congress, as the President points out, for something like 26 months.
Well, that's not a virtue from your point of view.
It certainly isn't.
The record of the hearings.
Very forcefully in those hearings.
Well, the Secretary of HCW.
That has been a major emphasis. We have also made a very great effort to point out that we have 3 separate sources of funding, either in being or proposed by the administration, for child care. We have, and those 3, for example, are not involved in this legislation. This is an add-on, as far as it appears, so that potentially the same arguments have been made throughout.
But nobody from the administration ever before objected to communal...
Well, that would be, I think, your word that you used there. I think the President's view on, I think...
Contradiction of what the White House document and the bill suggested to the administration in terms of daycare settings. Is what you're saying now the position that the President is not in favor of one of the most major recommendations of that Congress?
I think I said earlier, and I think, as I said in previous remarks here in this room, that the simple approach to the question of daycare would be that because the President has taken this action that he does not favor daycare for the economically disadvantaged and for parents who are working and who have to work, both parents, to maintain the standard of living. That is not the question here. The question involved here is not whether or not the President is against daycare. He's not. And H.R. 1 supports that point. Our support of the tax deduction proposal supports that point. The emphasis that the President puts in his message on his reason for vetoing this is, number one, the fact that he feels a massive program such as this, bypassing the states, a massive program which brings the federal government so much to bear on this procedure that, number one, it is too extensive of a federal effort in this area, and number two, that it is very difficult to administer and will be, and the cost is exorbitant, and because of these reasons, he is elected to veto it.
On page 2 of the statement. Past administration positions on this.
Step in at any time.
A lot of clear signs, and I think the committee certainly did.
Well, on the second page.
Actually, no one can make that decision until it's on the President's desk. But what the President is saying is that these provisions in the OEO bill are unacceptable. And this was made clear all through the legislative process on OEO, both in legal services and in the question of earmarks and the removal of the authority of the President to delegate programs. We think that this severely changes the character of the agency from the path that the administration has laid out for it. And we find this kind of philosophical approach that the Congress has taken towards OEO unacceptable.
But
You're not willing to say as a definite.
Sir?
For those in the editing room this evening, the reason we're doing this at this late hour is because all the cameramen wanted overtime tonight. Sorry. You have the veto message to the Senate indicating that the President is returning without his approval Senate Bill 2007, the Economic Opportunity Amendment of 1971. As I indicated to you over the last few days, President Nixon has deliberated very carefully about whether or not to sign this legislation. In deciding not to sign it, he asked me first to underscore his hope that Congress As I've indicated over the last few days, President Nixon has deliberated very carefully about whether or not to sign this legislation. In deciding not to sign it, he asked me first to underscore his hope that Congress will go to work at once to provide the continuation of funding for OEO, which, as you know, expired last night, and also that Congress will also revise the Legal Service Corporation portion of this bill and return it for his signature as soon as possible. On the question of child development, I want to say that what this veto means and what it does not mean is simply this. It's workfare legislation, H.R. 1, established this beyond any doubt. And so does the administration's support of the child care tax deduction in the Revenue Act of 1971, which would amount to federal assistance for parents who wish to provide voluntary daycare for their children. Secondly, the veto does not mean that the President has abandoned his commitment to provide better opportunities for all American children during the first 5 years of their life. That commitment has been and is being honored through the Office of Child Development in HEW, through our continued operation and refinement of the Head Start program, through our tripling of food stamp participation and doubling of child nutrition spending over the last 3 years. Also through the improved health services for the poor children under Medicaid. The stand that President Nixon is taking today, both on daycare and the wider range of services called child development, means simply this. In order to defend and protect the President's commitment to the first 5 years of life, he is rejecting a congressional proposal that promises far more than we could deliver, both in terms of the $20 billion potential yearly cost and in terms of the admitted inability of the bill's own supporters to describe just who would staff and operate a vast national system of child care centers. The President is rejecting a plan that would create a huge new bureaucracy, virtually unmanageable, that would lead to the potential of 7,000 separate grantees and its own intricate structure, completely bypassing the state government, which, as you know, have over the years played a major role in child-related services. He is also rejecting a proposal to put the federal government in business on a tremendous scale with the actual supplying of child care services, rather than following the pattern of the President's workfare plan, H.R. 1, which proposes, together with the tax deduction proposal, the limitation of the federal role largely to assist parents to obtain care services, which would be provided through the market or at the municipal, county, and state level.